Testing.
Testing. Good.
Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Virginia City Council chambers. This is a regularly scheduled committee of the whole meeting. We'll call this meeting to order. Today's date is Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023, and the time is 9 a.m. Welcome to all of those who are in the audience today and those of you who are listening at home. Like I said, this is a working session for the city. All recommendations moving forward and votes will go to the City Council meeting next Tuesday for final approval. We have a quorum present today, and so I'll turn this part of our committee whole meeting agenda over to our city administrator, Britt C. Bennis. Britt?
Mayor, the first item on the agenda is a request to review the quote for update to our housing study. Our last housing study was completed in early 2020. We do have a market rate apartment complex that is looking to locate in the Midway area, and as part of their pro forma creation, they do need an updated housing study. Things have changed since 2020. We do know that there's a lot more factors in this area right now. We know there's a lot of housing that needs to be sought. So it would be a good idea for us to figure out our housing study and figure out what we need in the area. We do have John Fido from Bridgeview Development here also, which is where this project is hoping to locate, if you want to talk to Mr. Fido about the project.
Okay, thank you. And we're talking about the housing study now. Mr. Fido, if you'd like to give us a little update of where you're at in anticipation of a project on your property. And then, of course, our city administrator has explained that we're looking to update our housing study, which is time for us to do it anyway. Please state your name for the record and welcome to the committee of the whole meeting, sir.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, John Fido. I have been involved with Ridgeview Development since its inception. I'm the single owner and developer. We have been long looking for the type of project that might fit best on that particular site, and taking into account everything that's going on in the last 10 years or so, from COVID to economic development issues and changes in the economy, housing seems to be a consistent element that the entire Iron Range, northeast of Minnesota, is looking to move forward with. A variety of communities across the range are looking at the potential for individual developments. Each is looking for its own developer in terms of a private developer, along with some of the public sector housing that has been going on as well. So we have been working with a private developer over the course of the last year or so, and in particular looking at workforce housing and market rate housing as the two elements that seem to be the type of housing that has the most interest. And while we're chasing interest rates now the other direction, again, making it a little more difficult, one of the pieces of information that has consistently been sought out by developers across the Iron Range has been a current housing study and the marketplace for the types of housing that the developers are looking at. We met with a developer and the folks from the IRRR, excuse me, as well as the mayor and local officials, looking to the types of possibilities that would be available for a marketplace on that particular site. One of the things that the developer has been looking for is additional information. They have successfully built a development on the West Range over the course of the last 3 years, highly successful, market rate. And again, with that kind of experience, we're looking at the possibility of location on this particular site. One of the pieces of information, as I said, was a locally sponsored housing study update. And that's kind of where we are right now. Any questions that I might be able to answer?
Thank you, Mr. Fido. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. So one of the things that I saw in here is that it may take up to 6 months to do this update. Is that acceptable? Is that appropriate? I mean, that was my first thing. Is it looks like the bill is 18,000 something for an update, and what was our original cost for the original?
I want to say it was 13, but I'll have to look back, and that was a couple of years ago. While the total study will take 6 months, they do know that we have a project specific, that we're going to need some information specifically, so they hope to have that portion in 6 weeks, and the rest would be 6 months for the full city. But that site will be
Okay.
ready immediately for this project.
Okay, that gets rid of a lot of my angst. Thank you, Britt.
Hibbing's currently doing a housing study right now, too, so they did mention that if we were to enter into a contract relatively soon, we would share a lot of the travel costs, because they come up once to do both cities at the same time.
Yes, and just to add, in our conversations at the meeting with the IRRB regarding their, and at the mayor's meeting with IRRB, they were making a presentation last Wednesday at the NEC. So the IRRB is all in on these housing studies, and they had indicated at those two meetings that they would help communities with the costs associated with the housing study. Councilor Motley?
Can we ask the IRRB to possibly pay for this housing study instead of the city taxpayers? My concern being this, it sounds like potentially this developer may want a TIF district or some type of subsidy, and what if we don't grant them that and we just had the taxpayers pay all this money for a idea of what this area needs, and then we don't follow through on giving them tax breaks on this piece of property, so we just threw this money out the door?
Well, I think that the housing study update is necessary. Most of these studies need to be current for developers to come in and develop property, regardless of whether or not the property project that Mr. Fido is proposing in the future. If the city decides they're not going to provide those in-kind services, that housing study will still be valuable for any future developments that we have within the community. And that's what developers look for, something more current than something that's 3 to 4 years old.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think the IRRB in that argument was made that, the investment the city makes. And so the IRRB says in order to have these current studies, they're going to also start promoting communities on the Iron Range and the Taconite Tax Relief Area. And part of that, their commitment to housing is to help pay a portion of the cost of the studies, particularly those who already have studies, and for an upgraded cost of that when we do our updates, and we're one of those communities.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Councilor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. So I have a couple questions regarding, it's Maxfield, is that correct? That we got the quote from? So when you had included, Britt, the original comprehensive housing, oops, I just lost it, demand need analysis, that was conducted by Housing Advisors. I'm not sure where they're out of, but I have a concern about Maxfield conducting the survey, as they are also a developer. So I feel there's a conflict of interest there that is concerning to me. And my question is, the study that we had done was from 2021. How long does a study hold its value? Like, is it every 3 to 5 years? How many years it should be between the times that we actually conduct a housing study or
It's usually
survey?
about 3 years. The one previous to that was 2018. So that tells you how quickly we do them.
So my question then would be, when this company, Housing Advisors, it's housing-advisors.com, when they did our survey back in 2021, why didn't we just go to them and say, could we have an update? I feel like that would be a lot less expensive. Plus, I have a concern with Maxfield being a developer, that there is a conflict of interest there, and I wouldn't vote to go forward with that.
I have reached out to Housing Studies. I haven't heard back from them yet. So if we wanted to wait a little longer to see if I get some more information, we certainly can. They have all told me that they're very, very busy because of that funding that's coming available from the state. There's a lot of cities doing the same thing, updating their housing studies. I just haven't heard from Housing Advisors yet.
Okay, and so I guess I would recommend reaching out to them to get a bid, or not a bid, but a quote, because they initially did it in 2021. They should have all the paperwork and just do an update. And then as far as Maxfield is concerned, I just feel that there's a definite conflict of interest for them being a developer, that they could potentially give information that would be, that they would have a leg up on any other developer that may come forward to the city of Virginia. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson, and you make a good point. This is just to review the quote. We're not required to make any vote with respect to this. I think by looking at other opportunities and waiting for that response back from that other company that Britt is waiting for, that I believe that we need an updated housing study, just who's going to do it. So any other questions, comments? If we just have staff to continue to resource and research a potential housing study vendors or quotes. Does that make sense, Councilor Paulson?
Thank you. Just one last question. When we did the hotel study, I think we did the Coates, one for the Coates and then one for the Hospitality LLC. Who incurred the cost on those?
There was 3 that happened at the same time. We had one, the chamber had one, and then there was another one that, there was 3 different studies that happened at the same time.
And who incurred the
We
cost?
did one of them.
We did, the city incurred one. Okay, all right, thank you, Brett.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. So any other questions or comments? We have reviewed the information that's in our packet. There is no requirement for action by the council. We've looked at it, and do you need a motion, Britt, for us to continue to seek other vendors for this project, for this housing study?
That'd be great.
Okay, looking for a motion
So moved.
by Councilor Beyondich. Is there support?
Support.
By Councilor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Do we need to have some sort of timeline on how long we're going to wait? I'd hate to sit on this and then lose the opportunity for this group as well. Like, if we don't have something by the next committee of the whole meeting, would that be? I just want to make sure we're not going to sit on this too long and lose another housing opportunity that we need in this community very desperately.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Fido.
I know that I wasn't aware that Maxfield was a developer. I've been involved in the public housing sector for about 20 years, and while I've come across Maxfield many times and utilized their study as the basis for potential funding mechanisms, going with lenders and grantors because they do have a level of credibility, I wasn't aware that they were a developer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so it has been moved and supported to direct staff to continue to look at other vendors with respect to the updated housing study, and to bring back some information back to the next committee, the whole meeting, as requested. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fido.
Next item on the agenda is review the quotes received for annual generator maintenance from Pioneer Critical Power.
Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I did the math a couple times, and in this particular contract, I'm looking for the right page number here. It appears that that doing yearly is cheaper than doing a 3-year by $1,000 some dollars.
Yeah, today. Next year, the price will go up, and they don't know what it's going to be.
Okay.
So if we lock in the 3-year, we know the guaranteed increase in the next 3 years.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. I did the same thing. I had to add it up a couple of times, and then I had to call and ask the question, and then, yes, it's.
And I have another question with respect to this quote for the annual general maintenance. So we have a generic generator for the city hall. There's another one up at Washington Manor, correct? And so is Pioneer Critical Power the current provider of the generator maintenance for the city?
City Hall and for the Fire Hall. We have never had a maintenance plan on the other ones.
Okay, just for,
The City Hall and Fire Hall, because those are the 2 newest ones.
correct.
We've never had a maintenance plan on the other ones.
Okay, so, but we're, has Pioneer Critical Power been doing our other ones?
Correct.
Very good, thank you,
You're
Britt.
doing City Hall and Fire Hall, correct.
Okay, all right. Looking for additional questions from the council or council action. Councillor Motley.
Britt, would it be your opinion that we just recommendation do the 3-year?
I'd like to defer to Jim Rosfit, because he's been the one that's been doing the research on this. He's the one that brought it to my attention that the other generators hadn't been serviced in years, and that's where this
Thank you.
came up. The company came to service the Fire Hall and City Hall and said to Kurt, our maintenance person, you know, you really should service your other generators in the city. And once we started inventorying how many generators we have, we thought, well, boy, we really should be servicing our generators in the city.
Right, and thank you all. Welcome Jim Rosvit, our Public Works Director. Jim?
Morning.
Morning.
Yeah, our mechanics took care of some of that, but there's some stuff involved in there, the electrical, the natural gas. The one at the wastewater treatment plant, that's a Cummins generator. That's a bigger generator. Several of the others we have are the Generac generators. And then the ones at the lift stations some are a variety of different ones. So we'd like to get in with one contractor to service them, and it would be every 6 months. So twice a year they'll come in, they'll service them, they'll load test them. I know we've got one that's burning oil and using a lot of oil on it. We're still running it, you know, it's still doing what it needs to do, but I think we need to monitor this closer than what we are and put some type of maintenance program in.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Johnson?
Thank you. Will this allow for us to be able to plan the replacement of the generators as well? You mentioned the ones in the lift station are really old. I'm guessing that some of them, you were just talking about one that are coming to their useful life, so that would help us be able to budget out for those things since we've never talked about them prior to today.
And that's another reason, you know, we look at our hours, we get the reports back on the hours to say we're running low on compression or we're using oil, you know, we're reaching its life expectancy. They're going to pass that on to us, and that's something that's going to be monitored on, like I say, that biannual basis. So.
Thank you very much.
And I have a question. So when we're going to redo these entire lift stations to automate them, will we still need a generator system to operate?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions from the council? Councillor Freely?
Was this the only company that we sought a bid from, or are there others more locally?
This is the one that could cover us for our needs. We are limited because we had a variety of different generators. And they've been servicing our other generators. And we just wanted to put the rest of them in on the same packet. So we used one service for all of them.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is a professional services agreement, right, Britt? Okay, thank you. So looking for council action.
I will move the agreement.
Councillor Johnson moves to approve the agreement. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Councillor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Jim.
The next item on the list is our equipment list for the capital equipment bond. We have updated it since the last time you have looked at it by adding in a few things that has already been approved, such as the Vector truck, and then the expected HVAC upgrades at the Public Works Department, which puts us a little over the $3 million mark that we need to be at. So we're $34,050 over, so we're coming to the council to talk about what we would need to cut out of this list to get us back down under $3 million.
Councillor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. I did a quick review, but on the Cable Commission equipment upgrades of $20,000. So in the discussions that we've had at the Cable Commission meetings is that they don't believe that anything used for public access should be coming out of, or for our levy, the fees from a levy, that there are PEG fees set aside, and Britt and Lori and I, we had a great meeting. And I think now those PEG fees are going to start to accrue and then roll over each year, year to year. And I know Sherry has a separate fund for those, and Sherry was in that meeting too. So I'm just questioning if that needs to actually be in the capital outlay, or if we can pull those funds from the PEG fees, even though we probably don't have enough in PEG fees for this year. I think it's about $11,000 a year, or $12,000 a year we get in PEG fees. So that would be one of my questions, if that could be pulled out and, from the capital bond, equipment bond, and then we figure out a different way to fund the equipment. So that might be one way to shave off a little bit of that. And then when we had originally talked about this equipment bond, I felt like we put the limit at 3 million, but we felt like we were going to be greatly under that, like 2 million. So does that have to do with one of the fire apparatuses, or?
Originally, it was going to be 3 million because of the fire apparatus. When the fire apparatus came out, we took down the 3 million, and then we recalled the Vector truck that had been approved to be ordered last year, that is being delivered this year. So that is included in this equipment
Okay.
fund. And then the 300,000 of HVAC expected upgrades we planned it, which we just approved last meeting.
Okay.
So it put us back at the.
And then the last question I had is the flooring on the Chevy Arena. So when we have not purchased flooring at all for that arena, or had we?
We do
Brian
not,
Silber?
we did not have flooring in that arena. What we currently have is, if you go into the arena, you will see we have the black mats laying on the floor. That is the type of flooring that we want to use. That is our overstock from the construction project. And what we would like to do is that entire wall that has the bleachers on it, we'd like to do that entire wall in that flooring all the way to the door that enters the arena. This would allow individuals in skates to get to the door for check-in and everything. Would be a huge benefit to our Learn to Skate program also.
Thank you, Brian. Okay. Sherry, any information with respect to the portion for the PEG fees? You taking that out of the equipment bond, and
I don't know, Julian, Counselor Paulson, if you did get the email, we did get last year's PEG fees paid in from Asabi. I'm sorry. We did get last year's PEG fees, 2022, paid in at the beginning of April. We're still waiting on 2023's. That was very minimal. I don't recall, Brett, around 2,000 maybe. So my suggestion would be is to put it in the equipment bond. If they need this equipment now, it's going to come out of the general fund, if it isn't in the equipment bond.
Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I think the issue from the Cable Commission's perspective becomes the people that are paying the media, that we're receiving the PEG fees from, those people that are MediaCom subscribers are already paying those fees. So then to tack it on to a bond would then increase their taxes, which they've already paid that fee. And it should be consistent, $11,000 to $12,000 of PEG fees, because those are, I don't think that's not a subscriber. I think, well, no, the poll fees are consistent. But I think those PEG fees have been generally consistent over the years.
I do know we had some left. When we had that meeting, we had a balance in there. It was darn close to 11 to 14 or something like that.
14,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that my only issue, and I understand what you're saying, but my only issue coming from the Cable Commission is that that is not the way in which we should be purchasing funds or purchasing equipment for public access equipment. That it's a federally regulated issue. So I don't know if that needs to be, we need to take a look at that.
And that might be good. In fact, I have the auditor in-house right now.
That would be a great question, because otherwise, I think from the Cable Commission's point of view is that it's like double dipping for the taxpayers. They're paying, the MediaCom subscribers are already paying for a fee, and then if we add it on to the bond, the burden will be on everybody, the taxpayers, but then the people that are MediaCom subscribers are going to be paying twice. So that's, I think that's the concern there. So if we could look into that, I'd really appreciate that. Thank you.
We'll do that.
Okay, thank you. Mark that down as part of this equipment bond discussion that we're having this morning. We don't necessarily need a vote for it right now, but just to review the initial list of the equipment that is being proposed for the bond. So that's one of the issues to take a look at. Are there any other questions, comments, concerns about any other equipment that's being proffered by our staff to include in an equipment bond? And so when was the last time we had an equipment bond? Was that in 2010? 2012, that bond was paid off, and so we're looking to move forward. I know that there's some angst about, kicking the can down the road, for the lack of a better term, but I think it's an efficient way of funding the things that we need over time, so it doesn't significantly increase our budget and put an immediate significant tax burden on our businesses and residents. So I think it's wise for us to go with the equipment bond, but it's just how much we want to spend and what we want to put in there. Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. Is that a 20-year bond? 10-year? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Beyondich. Okay, that was one suggestion. I think if we continue to take a look at the equipment bond after this meeting, as we move forward and make some suggestions about what we think can be done. And so in order to approve an equipment bond, if we choose to do so, when would we be taking a look at doing that? Is this during the budget process this year? Sherry? Okay, so we have time.
Actually, we need to do this soon. Because we need to do this soon. The Vector's on its way and the ambulance is on its way, so we need to get the funding before they come. So we are going to need to pass this hopefully in the month of May here.
Okay, so by the next committee of the whole meeting, we could have some more information about that?
Correct.
And
And
then
hopefully
make,
getting it pared down to under $3 million, because as soon as those arrive, if we pay for them out of our levy funds, it's difficult to put it back. So it's,
so if we have a decision by, which we could have by the next committee of the whole meeting.
would be wonderful.
And then move it to the following council meeting for final approval, that would be acceptable?
would be wonderful.
Okay, very good, let's do that. You don't need a motion for that? No. Okay, thank you. Anything else on this subject before we move on? Seeing none, Britt?
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approve the following request from the Virginia Library for road closure. And we do have Jody, the library director, here. The first one's the closure of Fifth Avenue from First Street South to Second Street South on July 27th, 2023 for Big Truck Day.
Well, I can tell you, Big Truck Day was a big success for the grandkids, so Jody?
Yes, both of these requests are for programs that we're having at the library, and part of it is just for, yes, for Big Truck Day, we need a place to park the big trucks, and also just for safety of all of the people that do come to enjoy the big trucks, from your littles to your bigs. So that is the first request, and the other one is for our, it is for, hopefully, our summer fair, end of summer fair will be on that Thursday, and again, for safety of everybody involved, that we will close the street and have all of our fun activities and hopefully even some music that day. We're still working out the final things for the 11th. And we also have rain dates on these too. So we have the rain date for the Big Truck Day is the day after, so it would be the 28th, and the rain day for the end of summer fair is the 11th of August. So one is in July, one's in August.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Johnson?
Will you be making arrangements for cement pour that day? For those of you who don't
I have
remember last
no-
year,
I
that was the
know.
biggest.
It was.
The biggest coincidences. all
Yes,
the
it
people.
was. I'm sure something will be happening on the construction site that day, so.
Let's coordinate.
Yeah,
I'll move
exactly.
to approve the closures.
Councilor Johnson moves to approve the request of the closures for item 1A and B under Building and Grounds. Is there support? By Councilor Beyondich. Is there any further discussion? If you need treats for the kids, I have an organization that will provide them for you, should you desire.
Thank you. So
Okay,
we
thank you.
are working out all of our final details, and at the next meeting, I will have summer reading booklets for you.
Great, let me know. let us know. Thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is discuss the scheduling of events at Iron Trail Motors Event Center for April 2024.
Brian Silber, our Park and Rec Director, once again, you're up. Good morning.
Good morning, council. We are in a unique situation where we have two beloved community events that are both vitally important that are in conflict for this next year. If you remember back a while ago, we had said that with the new event center, any opportunity we had to host a large hockey event or large events, we wanted to go ahead and try and get those events into our facility. We've been successful in doing that. This next year, we have been selected as a site to host one of the youth state tournaments, which will be the week or weekend of March 15th, 16th, and 17th. Traditionally, that is the weekend that the figure skating show takes place. So what the council had directed us to do previously is to bump the figure skating show. If you remember last year, we bumped the figure skating show into the month of April. In doing so, we discovered that that really was not fair to our figure skaters, because then our figure skaters, our older figure skaters that participate in spring sports, went to school all day, went to their after-school spring sport activity, then came to the rink for their winter sport of figure skating, getting ready for the figure skating show, and somewhere in there they had to eat, sleep, and do their homework. So we heard the feedback from our figure skating show of, this moving into April was not successful for the figure skating show. It put a burden on them. So at that point, we went ahead and said, okay, anytime that we are going to be hosting a state tournament, we're going to bump the figure skating show just by 1 week. That still gives them the 2-week window that they really need to practice and get the show down pat so that it is the quality of show that we're used to seeing here from the Virginia Figure Skating Program. Well, this next year, by bumping the figure skating program to the weekend of the 22nd and the 23rd of March, that's the same weekend that the Home and Boat Show desires. Now, back in, I believe it was 2021, there was an email between Tyler, who was our salesperson at the time, and Chrissy, where they discussed some dates moving forward, and they did discuss the 2024 date. Our policy says, though, that we don't reserve facilities more than 2 years out. And this reservation or a hold was never put on for the Home and Boat Show for those dates. Now, we have discussed with both the Home and Boat Show and with the figure skating coaches some different options of what we could do. The Home and Boat Show, we know they have the desire for a true dry floor event. No ice in the arena. They would prefer not to have the floor cover on. So keeping that in mind, the Home and Boat Show needs to occur after the figure skating show. So we had proposed to the Home and Boat Show to move this next year to the 28th, 29th, 30th, and 31st of March. Still puts them in the March window. Made that proposal without looking at a holiday calendar, because the 31st of March happens to be Easter. Now, this could have some positives and or some negatives for the Home and Boat Show moving to Easter weekend. One, a lot of people have Friday off, so it could possibly give them 2 days of what they experience as their traditional Saturdays. However, the Home and Boat Show is not interested in moving to Easter weekend, and it's really mute on my part to say what the pros and cons are, because the customer is not interested in moving. We could give the Home and Boat Show, what we currently have as the figure skating dates of the 22nd and 23rd, and move the figure skating show to Easter weekend. Again, that is problematic due to the fact that a lot of those individuals that participate in our figure skating show also attend church on a regular basis, and it's Easter weekend, so there's Maundy, Thursday services, there's Good Friday services. Our figure skating show would be competing with Good Friday services. Not the most ideal situation. The other idea that I've had in brainstorming was to move the figure skating show up to the only available week in the month of March 8th and 9th. But that happens to be what is known as a state holiday in the state of Minnesota of the high school boys state hockey tournament. And a lot of our figure skaters are part of our hockey community, so we would see decreased participation not only in skaters in the show, but probably of attendees to the show. We have looked at moving some of these events into the month of April. However, we have tentatively been, it's not been made public yet, but we have been selected as a site for a sporting event in the state of Minnesota the first weekend of April that will require two dry floors in both arenas. Again, one of these things that you asked us to bring in these big events that we've never had here, and so April 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, we have that. Then the following weekend, the SME show will be moving in. The week after, and they'll be there the entire third week of April. After that, we have the Job Fair and Earth Fest again. So the month of April's already booked. So we would have to be looking at moving into May for the figure skating show, and I can guarantee you that that would not set the figure skating show up for success. So I am coming to you hoping that you are smarter than I am and can either figure out a solution to the problem that we have of not enough building for everybody that wants to use it, or have you direct me as to who's not going to get what they want.
I'll go with Counselor Johnson first, and then I've got an idea moving forward that won't adversely affect and be moving around these figure skaters all the time. So, Counselor Johnson.
Mayor, do we have a signed contract for the Home Boat and Travel Show for next year?
We do not.
Okay. When did they sign this year's contract?
The week before the show.
Okay. So for me, I'm going to be very blunt. I think that our priority is our figure skating program. It's something we had done in this town for years and years and years. Ida Canosa, the lady up on the wall upstairs, has been doing this as a program for the city of Virginia. And I think at this point, for me, I would prioritize that large community event as a program of the city of Virginia as opposed to a rental. And I base that based on our history, and that even though there was this email from several years ago, this organization still doesn't commit in writing to something before a week before. And that, I think this would help them and figure out how to commit maybe a little bit ahead of schedule instead of the week before. So that's my opinion, would be to prioritize the skating program of the city of Virginia.
Thank you, Counselor Johnson. So I guess I can weigh in here, and then we'll go to Counselor Motley. This is a unique opportunity for us to hold to the state hockey terms. You don't get that opportunity very often. So in order to accommodate, I think our events have to make reasonable accommodations moving forward. And at the request of the Home Boat and Travel Show to have iceless opportunities for their venue, I would suggest that we keep intact so for you to consider, for us to consider, giving you the authority to make those decisions one way or the other, and we should support you with respect to that, but looking for our input. My idea is to keep the skating show on schedule the way it is, also to accommodate the youth hockey tournament the way that you're scheduled for, and contact the Humboldt and Travel Show. And for this year, if they don't want to move, you know, let's make an offer. You're not going to do it on Easter Sunday, obviously. Let's move it back one day. So instead of having Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, have the show Humboldt Church on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Sunday is open for Easter Sunday. Everybody can enjoy themselves. People that are going to leave for Easter Sunday will leave anyway. People that come in to visit on Easter Sunday are going to go to Easter dinner anyway. Saturday is still an opportunity. So that would be my suggestion. The skating program stays where they're unencumbered. The youth hockey program, a state hockey tournament comes in. It's a huge revenue generator for us. And I do believe that the Humboldt and Travel Show, which is a mainstay for us, we would like to see make some reasonable accommodations for the scheduling of events that we have moving forward. So those are my suggestions. That's my suggestion for us to consider. Councilor Motley.
I was actually thinking the same thing about maybe seeing if the Home and Boat Show would, maybe consider going a day earlier. And I support also Councilor Johnson on the figure skating staying on the date it has selected. Just for the fact also that to have a dry floor, it seems like the whole month of April is dry floor. Was the SME dry floor also?
SME this year and last year were both dry floor.
Okay, so if the Home and Boat Show would be willing to change the date to a day earlier, hypothetically, we'd be on a dry floor from March 27th right through May, pretty much.
Yes, we would be able to accommodate that. They just have not been willing to make that move at this point, which is why I'm standing before you today.
Okay.
Thank you. I think we have to make reasonable accommodations. I really do. We have to support all the events that are going on here. Sometimes things change, same with the deck. And talking to some of the vendors, and I'm not speaking for them in all of them, but some of the vendors, they prefer not to be open on Sunday. They prefer to have Sunday off. So if they got to come a day early, it might be easier for them to take that whole week and just have the Saturday, which is the big finale, and then even if they have to stay longer on Saturday, that's fine. So I think that's a reasonable request moving forward. And I would suggest that we explain it. I'm sure you already have explained the whole about Travel Show here. This is an opportunity that we can't pass up. We have other venues to consider. We ask you to make a reasonable accommodation, and I would hope that they would consider that. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. And
And then Councilor
I
Paulson.
agree with having them move up a day early. And I don't, however, agree with making staff make a decision like this. I think this is one of those times where if we said, staff, just go ahead and do it, they're going to make the decision and everybody's phone's going to blow up from whoever they know, from whichever faction going, how would this happen? So I appreciate that you came to us, especially on this one. We know we've struggled with communication with the Humboldt and Travel Show since the new building opened up. And I think this is the right venue to take it for this. And I would also say that if we go with asking them to move a day forward and keeping our skating programs where we all need to provide that united front in public and support. This was a council decision. The staff have our full backing. We're not going to go back and renegotiate it because somebody called somebody and yelled at them for an hour and a half. We really need to be a united front as a city supporting the staff, and a day accommodation this year, I think, Mayor, you're right. It's absolutely something that for as much as we've been able to accomplish in that building, I think that's a fair request. And I'll be honest, if they're not willing to do that, then we must not be the right venue for them this year. That would be my opinion on that we're willing to bump it up a day. If you don't want to do that, we're respectful of you, and let's sign a contract for next year. Now, for next year, so we don't have this problem again, knowing that the skating show is going to be the same weekend, now that we're getting into the rhythm of what happens, especially in the spring for dry floor. Thank you.
Yeah, let's make reasonable accommodations, and that's what we're requesting done. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so Brian, I'm reviewing the calendar here, and I'm noticing that it looks like from the 24th through the 30th, it's not expanded, or am I missing that? Do you have that in your packet?
24th,
Like you've got, it looks like the calendar is figure skating show,
yes, figure skating show
21st,
right
20
now.
Or 22nd, 23rd, but then if you look below that,
Yes, we do not have anything currently booked for the fact that
it's Easter.
it's Easter, and we don't have on the calendar that's on the website, that is what I assume you're looking at, we do not have the Home and Boat Show currently on the calendar.
Right, I'm not on the website,
Okay.
it's in our, whatever's in our packet. Okay.
Okay.
Off the website.
Yeah.
So then the question that I have, on the tentative dates that are reserved, sorry, I've got to blow it up, and for both arenas, April, it looks like 4th, 5th, 6th, and possibly
And 7th.
7th.
Yes.
Now, in the past, when Virginia has had, I don't know if it's the actual state, and I don't know
This
if I
would
can
be
mention
a-
it, but
yeah.
we've had it at the Tennis for All building in the past,
I was unaware of that.
where they rented that and utilized the Tennis for All, and I don't know if that was a state. Can I say it?
Not yet,
Okay.
because it has not been
Okay, so,
announced
I
publicly.
don't know if that was a state event, or if there must have been at least 300 people that were in attendance. So, but it was
gonna-
held at the Tennis for All building, and I'm just wondering if we could look at that and then offer the Home Sport and Travel Show that spot or that space for that.
We
for
can
those
look at
dates.
doing that. I do know for the Home Boat and Travel Show, one of the issues that they have is they really want to stay in the month of March, because the boat manufacturers have rebates and everything that they pass on to the dealers that end at the end of March. So moving into the month of April, then the boat manufacturers no longer have those rebates, and so they're afraid that would negatively impact their event with the number of boats that are at the show.
Okay, and that makes sense, and I feel like we all just need to try to work together to make all the accommodations happen, but again, so when we're looking at the state tournament, the Home Sport and Travel Show group is paying about $12,000, I think, for that. Last year, they paid $11,800, I believe.
This past year, they paid $10,663.61. We are following the de-escalating rental rates for them. This next year, they will pay $12,440. Also factoring the revenue that we receive from concessions. This year, it was about $2,700 that we brought in concessions. So next year, projecting that Home Boat and Travel Show would generate our facility about $15,000 in revenue.
And how much does the State Hockey Association pay for the Bantam tournament to the ITMEC?
To us directly, we're looking at several $1,000s. However, we're also looking at hotels being full, restaurants being full, so the economic impact of that. From the figure skating show standpoint, pulled these numbers this morning because I was expecting Councilor Beyondich to ask me this question. Registration just for participating in the figure skating show this year was $11,000. Admission to the show was $9,000. Concessions from the show was just shy of $4,000. So revenue that the figure skating show brings into us is about $24,000. Then, of course, we have all the expenses that are on top of that, because the costumes and coaching all comes out of that. So it's not a fair comparison to say figure skating's $24,000, Home and Boat Show's $15,000. Well, let's go with this, because we have a lot more expenses with the figure skating show. but both of them are vitally important and beloved programs and events that occur in our city and serve our region.
Thank you for that, Brian. And then was there communication, apparently there must have been communication with the Home Sport Travel Show folks for that Easter weekend, and they
Yes.
declined that
Correct.
as of now. And so what you're suggesting is to maybe go back and see if they could move it up a day. And I have a question, because there was a conflict with these dates and they were promised those dates in writing. Could we financially accommodate them because of that? And maybe they would be happy to move
If the
that?
council gives me the permission, directive, whatever you want to say, to financially negotiate with them to make it a little more appealing for them to do that, I would definitely be willing to do that. I don't want to lose either one of these events.
I agree, and I don't know how the rest of everyone feels, but they have it in writing that they were promised that date. I can appreciate where they're coming from. However, we have an opportunity for a state hockey tournament, which is hugely important. The figure skating club it's always been part of a tradition in March. And Easter just kind of messes things up this year, because I don't think Easter normally doesn't. So I feel like it's an anomaly that this is happening. But if we could have some accommodation financially, if the council would be willing to do that, I would be okay with doing it, and at least letting them know that we appreciate their willingness to potentially consider moving their date. That's what I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Paulson. I agree. If we could direct our staff to renegotiate as a reasonable combination for them to make a change for this year only because of that, well, then all three venues can operate in accordance with what they need to do, which is important for us to do. So I would be supportive of allowing that negotiation to move forward as well, to make it give an incentive. So first, Councilor Johnson with his light on, and then over to Councilor Motley. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you. I believe that the event that was held at the Tennis for All building was a regional event. I have attended the state events, and they're enormous. So I believe, I'm not sure about that. I've attended nationals, and it puts our space, because, yeah, anyway. The other thing I'd like to remind the council is we already do give this Homeboat and Travel Show significant financial benefits with some of the accoutrements we offer them at no cost. So there's already some financial incentives for them to be here. As much as I'd like everybody to feel good about this, at the end of the day, I think we are doing our best to accommodate them, and the Homeboat and Travel Show really needs to take a good look at how much we're trying to, and moving a day, to me, and I've run big events, but not that one, a year out, I think it still matches what they're looking for. I'm not willing to compromise on the city program and the skating program, and what that does for the community. And then the other tournament that's coming is a whole nother venue of people that have probably never been to Virginia. And the economic impact from that, long-term with booking and other opportunities, is huge. So I think that's where I would be at.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Motley.
Just a quick question. What break does the Iron Trail, or does the Home and Boat Show already get from the city?
This next year, with their de-escalating prices, for 2024, they will be receiving a 30% discount on their rental. And then City Council has also waived the fees for tables, chairs, and power.
Do we give this type of discount to anybody else?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think we made an agreement with respect to that as a long-standing vendor for many, many, many years. We made that because we promised that a long time ago that we would provide that opportunity. However, that was for those dates based upon the negotiation that we had. But I do believe, and I agree, Councilor Johnson, that we've already given them some discounts, but because, as an incentive to have them move that Humboldt Travel Show and not lose it, I think just for this 1 year, we can figure out some small token, that shouldn't be, it's not the proper term, to some kind of a discount just for the accommodation to move it back in order to accommodate. And then the following year, you'll look at the schedules moving forward to find out what that is. So I'm not opposed to but only on a one-time basis. So, and I think that's fair to take a look at it, not necessarily that we would pass that based on the negotiations. So, thank you. Anybody else? Councilor Johnson.
I will move to prioritize scheduling the skating program on the dates that have already been established.
Okay. Okay, there's a motion on the floor by Councilor Johnson. Only a motion about the skating program, none of the other schedule of events. To leave the skating program scheduled the way it is. Is there support for that? Support by Councilor Motley. Further discussion, Councilor Beyondich.
And yes, I was going to be asking about the financials on all of that. And I'm not sure where we are on the software to get proper financials for the event center. And just a reminder that, yes, last year they did not sign that contract right away. There was still a lot of angst and moving parts to that. So it wasn't lack of not just putting it off and not signing it. There were a lot of details that we had to work out before that contract was signed with them. So any idea on where we are on the software for the event center?
I think our Park and Rec Director, Brian Suber, can answer that question. Brian?
Yes. So as you've been saying, we've wanted to update the software and everything. RecDesk, quite honestly, we have outgrown RecDesk, which is our current facility software. We've encountered a lot of issues of reports and everything and scheduling with it. Great news is that our account with RecDesk, our subscription to RecDesk, ends this month. RecDesk also upped their fee for us for the next year. Well, there is a Minnesota-based company now called Finley Sports, which you are seeing a lot of park and rec departments throughout not only Minnesota, but throughout the country switching to Finley Sports. Their owner just finished his non-compete clause from his company that he had sold to ActiveNet, which is the industry Cadillac of facilities scheduling software. It's also very expensive. Finley Sports is much more economical, and so yesterday we started our onboarding process with Finley Sports of setting our system up in Finley Sports, and we'll be transitioning to Finley Sports. Hopefully we see that from both a scheduling and a reservation program aspect that we have a much easier and more enjoyable experience with Finley Sports. So far, staff absolutely loves this program. It is super, super user-friendly. And reporting in it is from, we haven't gotten to the onboarding of reporting, but from the demonstrations, financial reporting, percentage of usage, gains and losses, the amount of reports that they have, you can tell that they had somebody from a finance office that like to put together reports that are dumbed down so that somebody like myself can even understand a financial report.
Thank you. Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. So that tracks all the inventory coming in versus selling.
That's in the concession stand, and that is a program that we are currently onboarding also with called Yellow Dog. And our lead rec assistants are taking the lead in getting all that in. With that, we've had to get the barcodes from each of our products. rather than having a button on the cash register for candy bar, now we have, we'll be scanning the Snickers or the Twix or whatever. So at any time, we will be able to pull up a report that tells us we have 3 cases of Snickers and 8 more Snicker bars on hand. We'll be able to generate reports that will tell us by day how much of each product that we're selling, rather than right now, the report that I can generate is, well, I can tell you during the figure skating show, we sold 85 candy bars. I can't tell you if they were Twixes, Snickers, Three Musketeers, what. Moving into the Yellow Dog, adding Yellow Dog to the software will give us that ability. Also gives us the ability to make a menu item, such as putting together a hot dog. So we would know how many physical hot dogs, how many hot dog buns, ketchup packets, all of that goes in there and gives us the cost of creating a hot dog so that we're better able to forecast what that costs.
Thank you.
Okay,
Is that okay?
anything else?
No, that's all. I just wanted to make sure it was okay
Okay.
that he explained it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely,
thank
yeah.
you.
So we have a motion on the floor right now to leave by Counselor John, supported by Counselor Motley, to keep the figure skating schedule the way it is as proposed moving forward. So that's the motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. And this one is for our city attorney. I'm not sure if you had a chance to review what the letters between, the exchange between Tyler Lindeen and Chrissy Warwis were. I just want to know if there are any legal ramifications with the back and forth that happened between the two parties. And is there an obligation on the city's behalf because of this back and forth discussion?
Mr. Lindsay?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I have looked at those letters. There is, I think there's some concern there, though. Clearly, our policy is that we don't book that far in advance when these conversations were happening. There was no follow-up in the interim to discuss exactly what the plan was and what was scheduled. Ultimately, the types of claims that would be made in a situation like this requires that any reliance upon those communications or the dates that were discussed previously be a reasonable reliance. So obviously, without getting too far into it, the question is it reasonable to rely on dates 2 years ahead based on some communications when it's not in line with the policy and there's no follow-through? So, but is there some risk? There is.
Counselor Paulson?
Thank you. And I guess I just want to, that's my only hesitation is if there's a legal risk moving. I mean, I would rather like to see a conversation take place before we move anything forward in a definite, we're moving it forward, to see if we could do some financial accommodation and have that conversation go forward if they would be open or willing, rather than approve something right now and get everyone's hairs on the back of their neck standing up. And we may have some legal issue by doing that.
And my
That makes
question
sense
after,
to
my question after this vote was going to be, do I need council directive or permission to be able to adjust the prices? And can I just have that conversation, adjust the prices as I see fit, and report back to council, hopefully with all parties coming in a happy tone at that point?
Well, that may come in after this vote, that may come in another motion. But Counselor Paulson, do you want to please
Just to
continue?
wrap it up, I guess I'll probably have to vote against the motion on the floor, because I'd rather have the conversation first without, just because there could be some legal implications. So I'd welcome you to have that conversation and give you the authority to do what you need to do. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I mean, there's a risk reward, obviously. but I believe reasonable combinations need to be made. The motion is on the floor. I don't want to belabor it any further, but there's a motion and support to keep the skating schedule the way it is, and then we may look at motions later on. But that's the motion on the floor now. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Freely.
I have to agree, there is further discussion and further negotiations that are necessary, so I would not be able to support this vote.
Okay, very good, thank you. All right, so it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion, please, roll call, please.
Counselor Motley?
Yes.
Counselor Freelib?
Nope.
Counselor Paulson?
No.
Counselor Beyondich? No. Counselor Johnson?
Yes.
And Counselor Barnzelli? Yes. And Mayor Cuffey?
No. Thank you. And if I may, oh, never mind. Okay, Councillor Johnson.
So I will still make the motion to offer the last week in March to the Homeboat and Travel Show at an additional of 10% time off, or 10% off the last. That's my motion, off the total of the 24, as an incentive to move a day.
So we are authorizing our staff to negotiate. The motion is to allow staff to negotiate this.
The motion is to offer the last week in March to the Homeboat and Travel Show with an additional 10% off the total of the 2024 bill.
Okay, a motion on the floor by Councillor Johnson. Did you get that motion, Sherry? Okay, is there support for that motion? Is there support for that motion? Is there support for that motion? Lacking a motion to support, the motion dies for lack of support. Councillor Johnson.
So my concern is that we want to get together in a room with a group that has said absolutely not, we're not moving, period. That's what I'm getting, that's what they came in here last year and they said, we want our way, and we gave it to them. They're coming in this year. Who is managing that building? If our program as a hockey, or as a skating program is not our priority, and we're gonna ask them to move with kids and all the stuff we've talked about here about scheduling and everything, and we're gonna get them in a room together, and you know, I'm surprised nobody from the Homeboat and Travel Show is here today, because we're trying to make an accommodation. I offered two motions that would allow for accommodation, that would say our priority is skating. That's what our priority as a city is, our program that we fund, that we coordinate, that we pay independent contractors for. That's our priority as a community for that building was for. And then to offer, the second one was to offer this organization an ability to give a little back. To say, we understand how important this is to your community, we understand that hockey is important, we're willing to move a day and move a week so that we can have what we want with the dry floor. If they didn't need to have a dry floor, this wouldn't be an issue, is how I'm understanding it. We could swap the weekends and things may be a little bit better. So I'm frustrated that we're going to make the staff have the conversation again with them about moving. Brian's been pretty clear about what their expectation is. So there's nothing else I'm willing to put into this at this time, because we're at this point, we're not moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have some time to negotiate this moving forward, and I appreciate your comments, Councillor Johnson. But for me, it's about getting everything, our ducks in a row from the beginning. And I don't think I'm only speaking for myself, and obviously Councillor Johnson as well, and probably others, that it's important for the skating program to stay and remain the way they are. I agree 100%. But I do believe that we need to try to accommodate all three of them at one time. We still have time in which to do this, and I think by giving the authority for our staff to negotiate some kind of a reduction, and 10% is a good start, maybe it's 5%, I don't know, to move forward, to at least have that additional conversation. and see if there's any movement. And at that particular time, bring it back to us, and then we can vote on it. So, I mean, I think the combination is, that we're discussing and asking, at least from my perspective, is that we're going to ask the Homeboat and Travel Show to make a reasonable combination and allow our city staff to negotiate that. If it doesn't come to fruition, then it doesn't come to fruition. But it doesn't compromise or interfere or negate the skating program schedule or the schedule for the hockey tournament either, because both of those have to stay the way they are and move forward. So you got to have the skating program intact in the schedule they want, and I think you have to have the youth hockey program around. We just need to make a reasonable combinations with respect to the Homeboat Travel Show. And I get where you're coming from, Councilor Johnson, but I think we just have a little bit of time in which to do that. But I don't disagree with the 10%, or maybe it's less, or I don't know. Councilor Paulson.
You, Mayor. And I think I'm hearing what you're saying, Councilor Johnson. It's a lot of pressure for staff to have to go back into that arena. So maybe what we should do is invite the Home Sport and Travel Show group. Do you want fireworks? No, and
Yeah, please continue.
and have a conversation with them as a body. Maybe that's the better way to do this, so we can. I mean, I'm just saying I'm willing to take the pressure off staff if that's part of the issue going on here. I feel like, you know, the reason I didn't support the motion is because it was a specific, and the 10%, like, I just want to give you the flexibility to be able to have an open discussion and negotiate as best you see fit, and then come back to the council. But if it's a lot of pressure to do that, I'm willing or open to have have them come before the council as a whole. I'm totally fine doing that as well. I just want to see this work for all parties, and I would agree with what the mayor said. I mean, the state tournament it's an opportunity that we can't pass up. The figure skating has always, you know, been in that, and then the Home Sport and Travel has always followed the figure skating. That's just the way the cycle has always been. So they don't have the ice on the floor. And it just so happens that Easter is an anomaly this March. So I feel like if we sit down, or you sit down, however you feel comfortable doing it, with us apart or you doing it on your own, I feel like we just need to work it through this year or the next year, because March just happens to be where Easter falls. So I'm fine either way, but I would feel that, I mean, if a motion needs to be made, I guess I would make a motion to authorize staff to go ahead and begin the discussion for negotiation.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point, because, you know, this is within the purview of your job description, and you've done an outstanding job trying to do all this. And so it is a responsibility that falls you, and there's a lot of stress and pressure in that regard. But if you go back and you're going to give the authorization, I'm assuming it's going to be in the form of a motion moving forward, and that gives you that opportunity. And if it doesn't come to fruition and there's no movement, then we can invite them to the council meeting and say, look, we send somebody to negotiate. What's the issue? Here's where we stand in consolidation about how we're moving forward and supporting the programs and making sure everybody has that opportunity. So, Councilor Paulson?
I'll make that in a motion.
And the motion would be?
To direct city staff to enter into negotiations with the Home Sport and Travel Show for the 2024 Home Sport and Travel Show. Thank you.
Okay.
Support for discussion.
Moved by Councilor Paulson. Did you get that? Supported by Councilor Freely. Further discussion? Councilor Freely.
And I think what alleviates some of the angst should be the fact that Brian is going to return to negotiate, with the consensus of the council being that we're not changing anything for the programming of the figure skating show. That's already set and that's scheduled, as far as the consensus that I just understood, as well as with the state hockey tournament. So we're talking to the Homeboat and Travel Show. Nobody else has to be entered into that conversation. So that should make it a one-sided conversation.
For those dates?
Those dates. And it essentially comes down to moving it one day. Not the ideal place where they want it to be, but still in March? And are you able to mobilize to get it a dry floor, given the events that are prior to that date? Or is that going to be up all night?
We would be able to meet those needs of having a true dry floor by their Tuesday setup.
And I think they have to understand that the prioritization of a Virginia City recreational program has to be our priority at this point in time, given this conflict in the schedule. And they should be understanding of that, being a good neighbor. Thank you.
Yeah, the term reasonable accommodation comes to mind always. So, Councilor Johnson.
So in order to support Brian in what you just said, Councilor Friedlieb, this council needs to send a united message that that weekend of the skating program is off the table, because otherwise they won't make assumptions. So I will only support the negotiation if the exclusivity of the skating program either is part of this motion or someone else makes the motion that I made earlier to schedule and have that be non-negotiable.
Thank you. I think the motion on the floor is to, and the support is to negotiate for those dates only. Is that correct? Not interfere with anything else. Keep all that intact as we move forward. It's to negotiate for those dates only. Thank you, Councilor Johnson.
So
Mr. Silber.
My question is, clarification on the motion is for negotiating in moving their dates to closer to the Easter weekend and preserving the dates for the figure skating show. That is your motion. So I think that kind of covers what Councilor Johnson his concerns are.
Yeah, and I think if we keep the skating discussions out of it, we keep the hockey tournament out of it, we focus only on the Homeboat and Travel Show to move those dates. And if the negotiations are ongoing for those dates and potentially some opportunities for reasonable accommodations to make a one-time adjustment for the 2024 event, if they say no, you'll come back with what your negotiation responses are, and we as a council can make that determination. I think for the most part, we are all in agreement that we want to keep the skating program intact. We want to keep that hockey tournament availability. It's the only addition is to try to negotiate the reasonable combination for the Homeboat Travel Show. If we're successful, we are. If we're not, we're not. But we still keep intact those two venues. I think that's the goal and objective here. So thank you. This has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion?
Can we have the actual motion read back, please?
Yeah, please read the motion back, Sherry.
Sure. Moved by Counselor Paulson, supported by Counselor Freelieb, to authorize staff to negotiate with the Home and Boat Show to move their dates closer to the Easter weekend of 2024 schedule with the exclusivity of the figure skating program.
No, that wasn't my motion.
No, it was, but the skating program wasn't in the motion at all. Because we don't want, I think we want to keep it exclusive negotiations only for the Homeboat Travel Show. These people are intact. We just.
If I
Yes,
may, Mayor?
yes,
Could we
Councilor-
possibly amend the motion to negotiate with the Homeboat and Travel Show to move their show to the week of March 25th through 31st, 2024?
I think that was the intent. If you want to add those exact language in there, let's put those exact dates in there then with the,
I would just want you just to negotiate, talk to them, see what might work. If those dates work, great. We're already booked for the other 2 dates, 2 weekends. See if there's, that's my intent. I don't know if that's your intent for support, but just to go ahead and have that conversation, negotiate with them, maybe extend a financial discount, and then come back.
Those are the only available dates.
right.
prior to
In
April,
March.
which accommodates their concerns.
Correct.
I could also have the conversation with them moving it into the month of April, throw that out as an option. My feeling, though, is that's not going to meet their expectation, but I will also propose that as a alternative for them.
I think the motion is to try to find some common ground to cement in the two venues and make sure that they stay where they're at and negotiate some kind of adjustment for the Homeboat and Travel Show. And I think that the motion does not include preserving for the figure skaters, nor for the hockey tournament as well. Those are already set. We've already, think that, yeah, that's the way it is. But we're just here to negotiate based upon that motion only for the Homeboat and Travel Show. Does that, Councilor Johnson?
I won't support that because I feel like they need to understand that we prioritize the Homeboat and Travel Show. And I won't support the motion because I want it documented that we have solidified that, and that's not negotiable. So I will not be supporting this motion.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Johnson has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Roll call, please.
Counselor Motley,
Yes.
Counselor Phelan,
Aye.
Counselor Paulson,
Aye.
Counselor Beyondich, Counselor Johnson,
No.
Counselor Barnzelli, and Mayor Cuffey.
Aye.
Okay.
Motion passes 5-2. Next item.
The next item on the agenda comes from the Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting that was held on April 25th. It's to discuss the creation of concept drawings and a design for vacant downtown lots.
So this comes from the Buildings and Grounds meeting. Councilor Johnson is chair. Councilor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. The idea for this is to be able to continue to improve downtown and what it looks like, having some ideas of what's going to go in vacant spots that aren't currently buildable, with the focus on the not parking lot between the Servicemen's Club and the building next door, to create some kind of ability to create a boundary from the sidewalk into the lot that would allow service organizations to sell things there, create a boundary from cars driving over the curbs, which they do regularly from Chestnut into it, and then pave the parking lot so it's a legitimate parking lot based on our standards. But we need to have a plan to be able to do that in order to, because there's going to be there are other lots available still, and to be able to ask for funding, grants and stuff, we need to have some sort of plan. So I will move that we award SCH the bid for concept and planning, which was significantly the lowest bid we received out of 5, I believe. So that's my motion.
Counselor Johnson moves. Is there support? Counselor Beyondich?
Support.
Oh, sorry. It's been moved and supported. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Or further discussion?
Sherry, do we have funds budgeted for these kinds of conceptual designs, and out of what line item would that come?
This would be in 2 areas, either the contingency fund or the economic development fund.
So there's monies available
There is money,
to
yes.
accommodate.
We
Okay,
haven't
thank
used
you.
it.
Any other further discussion? Counselor Beyondich?
Thank you. Do you know how much is in the Economic Development Fund? What the balance is?
We haven't used it at all, so whatever I budgeted, and I'm sorry, I don't have a
125 or
photographic,
150.
it's over 100.
It was over 100,000.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead.
Keep going. Thank you.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Like Counselor Johnson said, it's just easier to try to apply for grants when I have kind of a concept plan of what we're trying to do. So it's easier for me to get the grant funding for that. The next item was review the required easements for the Silver Lake Trail Connection Phase 3 project. And we do have Matt Reed, our engineer of record here, if you have any questions, and Brian Silber, our Park and Recreation Director as well.
Thank you for your patience back there. Appreciate it. Thank you, Matt. Did you want to come up and give a quick synopsis? Thank you.
Good morning. Yes, I can do that, Mayor. I'll try to keep it as quick as I can. So, in a nutshell, you guys are aware that we're working on the next phase of the Silver Lake Trail connection from Lakeside Park, baseball field area, down to past the Iron Trail Motors Event Center and over to 12th Avenue. That will allow a direct connection for pedestrians and bicyclists and people that use those trails to get from down by the mall, McDonald's, Target area, all the way up to Bailey Lake, Silver Lake, Mesabi Trail. So it's an important piece of the trail connection. We do have some funding for that. I don't believe we have enough to do that entire connection at this time, but we're going to do as much as we can with the money that we have. In order to do that and to meet trail standards and get it to be ADA accessible, we do have to work, or we've been working with Gethsemane Lutheran Church and Lutheran Social Services on some easements that we need in their parking lot area for the church, and then actually up into the yard for Lutheran Social Services. So what you see in your packet is just a real quick synopsis of what those look like and how much of an easement that we're requesting. Now, I say easement, I think their preference is that the city would purchase that property from them. There would be temporary easements required in addition to the permanent easements or purchase, whatever ends up being the case. But those would just be temporary, long enough to get the construction done. And so, for example, you see the highlighted in blue, the whole parking lot on the south side of Gethsemane Lutheran Church. The reason we need a temporary easement there is one of the things we've discussed with them is they asked if we would restripe their parking lot in exchange for removing one of the entrances that we're proposing. And that seemed like a very reasonable request, and so that we would need a temporary easement to have a city contractor go onto their property and do that work. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the gist of what we're looking for, and I think, Britt, the action we're looking for is...
Just a notification that we're in discussions with these two groups because they had mentioned selling to us, because and they made a very good point. 40 years from now, the church council may be very different than what it is today, and nobody may remember why that easement existed or what was going on. I don't know that Matt and I will be here 40 years from now either.
I hope I'm retired by then, but we'll see.
I hope I am too. But if we're not, at least this way it's transferred and it's out of everybody's, it's in the city's hands, city maintains, it's very clear who owns it, very clear who maintains it, and it just becomes our property. We just want to make sure the council was aware that we are having these discussions with them.
So, come from Building and Grounds, Councilor Johnson.
I will move to authorize staff and SCH to continue working on easements and/or purchases for the Silver Lake walking connection.
Okay, moved by Councilor Johnson. Is there support? Support. By Councilor Freelieb. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Beyondich.
Thank you. And when we talk about the purchase of the property, and where would that money be allocated to make the purchases?
This is most likely come out of the economic development.
Actually, this can be part of the grants that we have. Acquisition was included as one of the costs and part of the grants we got for this trail. Like Matt said, at this minute, it is well funded by LCCMR. We intend to also apply for IRRB to help round out the funding, and we're only going to go as far as we can with the funds we have. So if we only make it to the corner, we only make it to the corner, and that's as far as we get.
So this would be grant funded?
Correct.
Thank
That's
you.
the intent, yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Sherry.
And I do want to add on that at the committee level, we also have $20,000 that we set aside for lakes beautification trails. So if we had to, we'd use that.
Thank you, Sherry. Good news there. So it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. The next item is really just a FYI. It's coming from Buildings and Grounds, also from the April 25th meeting. We had a request to purchase the city-owned property at 117 11th Street South, and to be honest, I forgot we even owned it. I had to look back on how we got it. We had obtained it through a quitclaim deed. The people that owned it gave it to us because it was blighted to the point of demolition. So we had got the property for free to demolish the house. The adjacent neighbor has asked to purchase the parcel, and what we've done in the past when we have these requests is we send a letter to both sides and ask them if either of them are interested, and if they are, what they would offer. If only one party's interested, they get it. If they both get it, we have them come in and talk about, do we divide it in half? What do we want to do here? So we're going to, after the council approves us sending this letter, we'll send a letter to both property owners and let them know that the parcel's for sale. If you're interested, let us know within a certain time frame, and then we'll complete the transaction from there.
Okay, Counselor Johnson?
I will move sending the letter to the parcel owners.
Moved by Chair of the Building and Grounds Committee, Counselor Johnson. Is there support?
I'll support.
By Counselor Paulson. Is there any further discussion?
And Mayor, just for clarification, I
Yes.
think the tax value is based at like $2,400. So we're not talking a very large purchase here, but something that we'll get back in the tax rolls and off of our books.
Yeah. And the motion is to send a letter to both parties, see who's interested, and then move from there. Thank you. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries.
And then the final item from the Buildings and Grounds Committee was to discuss the proclamation regarding the Iron Trail Motors Event Center Design Committee.
And this also came from the Building and Grounds Committee. Counselor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. The number of hours that so many people have put in on the design committee from concept to today, I think it would be appropriate as a council if we formally thank them in the form of a proclamation. So I would like to make a motion to direct staff to work with the mayor on creating that proclamation and then inviting the folks that have served here for that when we do the proclamation to thank them and officially end the design phase of our building.
Okay, thank you. That's been moved by Counselor Johnson. Is there support?
I'll support it for discussion.
Yeah, support by Counselor Freely for discussion. Counselor Freely?
Is the design completed? Are we still looking at putting up the mural? And I mean, is that all part and parcel of that continued process of design? That's what I'd like to know, if this is a little bit premature or not.
Brian?
The mural, a lot of several members from the design committee have been involved in the mural, but I think those are two different things. Right now, we do have direction that we are going forward in seeking funds for the mural. I'm gathering all the information. We found a grant to apply for. But I do believe that Councilor Johnson or the Building and Grounds Committee is correct that it is time to thank the design committee. It's well overdue for the hundreds of hours that the design team spent in making sure that we have a building that functions the way that it does and is a jewel in our city's crown.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. As it has been moved and supported, is there any further discussion? First, Counselor Beyondich, and then over to Counselor Paulson. Counselor Beyondich.
Thank you. And I do think it's important. We did have community members that did spend countless hours working to pull the design together for the interior of that building. And I do know that a few of them are still working on the mural project until we get that installed. Moving forward, I think that design committee did a wonderful job. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Paulson?
Thank you, Mayor. And I think this is very timely. Councilor Johnson, thank you for suggesting, and I think it's very, I guess, timely to thank those members in our community that did dedicate many, many hours. The question I have is on the mural, Brian. How much longer until we kind of understand when it's going to go up, what the cost associated with it would be, and then where we're going to get funding?
It's all spinning around in my head right now. I'm waiting on one final cost. I have reached out to a local business to design the framework, a metal framework that would go around the three different sections of the mural. We have the location selected. We have a cost to have them mounted and hung on the wall. We just need that final cost of that framework to go around it and the glass in front of it to protect it. So I'm currently working, like I said, with a local business to get that cost. As soon as I have that cost, then I will be coming to the council seeking your permission to apply for a grant that we've identified that could fund this up to 100%. So 100% grant funding to get the mural hung. Unfortunately, with that being a grant, the application isn't until this summer. It's not awarded to this fall. So that means that we don't get the instant gratification of getting the mural hung now, which is, I was hoping to get it hung this summer so it would be on display for next hockey season. In all reality, we would be hanging the mural, if we received the grant, we would be hanging the mural next summer.
Very good. Thank you for that update. And then going forward, the design team had discussed maybe some different art in different spaces throughout the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. So from this point on, will that be a park and rec type situation or issue? If the chapter's closed now on the design team, will those types of ideas be formed and formulated at the park and rec?
Yep, at the Park and Rec Commission level. And we had several Park and Rec commissioners that were on the design committee, in addition to several counselors. So it would still follow that already established policy that the
And I
city
just want to make
has.
sure that that gets carried through somehow, because there was lots of discussion about different art or different things that we could accept, whether it be sculptures or working with the, what was it, the Masabi, the whole range they wanted to put, I guess, on there. So, I mean, just want to make sure that that's not going to discontinue. Conversations aren't going to be discontinued moving forward. So they will continue to be going forward, just with the Park and Rec Commission at the helm.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to prepare a proclamation in support and the thanks and appreciation for the design team members who have worked hours and toiled long hours in order to accomplish the goals and objectives of what it was originally designed for. So that's the motion on the floor, and there's support for that. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Johnson.
Mayor, Councillor Paulson, the Buildings and Grounds Committee would also be a venue. I would guess we'll be working in tandem up the chain. So, no, it won't get forgotten, as long as I won't sitting over here either. Thanks.
And thank you. And I'd just like to add really quickly for the discussion purposes, you know, issuing a proclamation at a city council meeting for all the long hours of work that was done, it for me doesn't seem to be quite enough. I would suggest that we have the proclamation and present that proclamation in a different venue, maybe with, you know, some coffee and cake and all kinds of things as a celebratory, really a token of our appreciation for all the long, and do it at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center somewhere. So that would be my suggestion moving forward, but the proclamation request is approved, moved and supported, and we can figure out where we're going to go from there. So it has been moved and supported to issue the proclamation for recognition for the design team. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, the next item under personnel is approve the resolution of hire for mechanics positions. We did conduct interviews yesterday, and we do have 2 position openings, and at this time, we would like to bring forward the names of Chris Best and Mason Isaacson.
Chris who?
Best.
Best?
EST, yep.
Okay, Chris
and
Best and
Mason Isaacson.
Mason Isaacson. Okay, thank you.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Johnson. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Councillor Motley to approve the resolution hiring 2 mechanics positions, offering one to Chris Best and the other to Mason Isaacson. This will be moved forward to the council meeting for final approval. Is there further discussion? Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. Do these 2 applicants have, or now current hires, have the minimum qualifications met on all items? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Paulson. It has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
And just while we're talking about personnel, I just want to throw out there, we will have a resolution for our summer students for the next meeting. I'm just waiting for some background packets to come back. And we'll also have a couple more recreation assistants, because we've had a lot of vacancies, so a lot of our recreation assistants have moved up to other positions in the city, so we have a few openings.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have one response to that. When I went on our city website, there is no application for a rec assistant currently listed on there. So if we are currently or actively looking to do that, if we could add that to our website. And then just for clarification, as we move forward with those hires, are we taking into consideration, like, not to discriminate, but I mean, like, if you're a hockey player and have a hockey schedule, 9 times out of 10, you're not going to be available to work. So are we kind of putting, or maybe this, actually, Brian, is this maybe a scheduling question? You know, normally how it's been working is the rec assistants will say, here's my availability. Are we now moving in any other different direction, saying this is what we really need from you instead of whatever your availability is, and we'll try to piecemeal a schedule?
Yes,
together?
we're moving more towards that direction rather than being the overly accommodating employer.
Right, and so with that in mind, then these new people that are coming forward for rec assistance, it's with that new scheduling philosophy going forward.
Yeah, and we've also communicated with our existing rec assistants the change in scheduling philosophy that we're implementing,
I think that's
giving
gonna
them
be
plenty
beneficial.
of notice.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor Paulson, thank you, Brian. Counselor Beyondich.
Thank you. When you mentioned that the rec assistants are moving up, when they move up into other positions, are they fully qualified for those positions? Do they meet the requirements?
Yep, one of them would be like Ashley Paulson moved into my secretarial position, and now she's on maternity leave. So the person that moved up into lead rec now leaves a vacancy in the recreation assistant. So it just creates a domino effect.
Right, but when if they move up into positions that require, like we've talked about, the Class B license,
Yep.
is that something they have to acquire at that time?
If it depends on, if it's a temporary position, the union contract regulates how that's done. They have 30 days to try the position, to like it, to get the qualifications they need. If we don't think they're working out either, we can remove them within that 30-day period also.
As a rec assistant, are they in the union?
Correct. After 67 shifts, they are in the union.
Are all rec assistants over 67 shifts?
No.
Do we hold them to that 67?
Yes. And yes, and there's,
So have they slid through, is what I'm asking?
no, the 67 shifts is the point of union membership, not the point of termination.
Right, that's what I'm asking, because I
Yes.
know when we first started this, we asked that those hours be kept track of, so it wouldn't slip into that.
They will. We cannot stop them. We can't hire people that we know we're going to terminate seasonals, like the summer students, for 67 shifts and then keep hiring over and over and over again.
But I didn't think we were terminating anybody.
We're not. So
We were
they are
keeping them
going
at
to
the
go-
67 shifts.
What do I do with them after the 67th shift?
When does that end? Is it for a full year?
It depends, no, it's anytime. Depends on how long it takes them to get through it. Some of those that are really, really open schedule could get through it very quickly. And those that only have a very small schedule takes a while to get through the 67 shifts.
I thought it was in a time period, that then you can rotate it.
So what happens is if you are a student who works has a lot of extracurricular activities and you don't get to work a lot, you can't post in any other positions until you pass your 67 shifts. So if you haven't worked a lot in the last 3 months, you probably aren't going to be at that point that you could post up into anything else.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Beyondich. Do we have a vote, or do we? We're good? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next item.
The next item is to discuss the process for appointment approval of 501c3 as per the naming rights agreement.
Okay, well, I am going to defer to the counselor for this. As you all know, I don't think there should be any in the agreement, but it is. We voted for it. So let's figure out how we're going to be able to do this legally. We have Brian here to help guide us along. Counselor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. And I really appreciate this being on the agenda today, because I feel like it's an opportunity for, I understand what your thoughts were originally.
The vote
Now,
is
we've already
move
gone,
forward.
so now
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, let me get my thoughts in.
Okay.
So the way I'm kind of picturing this, and I guess I need clarification, first of all, from our city attorney. One of the questions that I had is, does the city receive the car as a donation, or does the city have to sell enough not the city, the 501c3 entity, have to sell enough raffle tickets to cover the base cost of the car, and then any of the overage is what is received by the 501c3?
Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. By the plain language of the contract, it appears that the vehicle is a donation, though I have reached out to counsel for Iron Trail to get clarification on that. I have not heard back yet.
Okay, so regardless, there will be dollars available. We will apparently be working through, like, do we create a 501c3 or do we designate a 501c3 in our community, which would be like the Virginia Community Foundation or Revive that already exists. So my thought process is thinking really outside the box and big picture, that this opportunity, say the car is the donation and it's fully donated, and you can make maybe $125,000 a year off of a raffle that goes into a fund of a 501c3 corporation. I would like to take those funds then and have, whether it be Downtown Dance Academy, Minnesota Twisters, the gymnastics clubs, any and all available groups be able to apply for a grant that they would be utilizing as programming at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. So if the Minnesota Twisters wanted to do a gymnastics competition, they could apply for a $10,000 grant from the foundation, from the proceeds of these raffles, and every organization in our community could benefit, and it would go then you could, Brian, if you maybe follow what I'm thinking here, that then those entities would book the Iron Trail Motors Event Center at a full price, because that grant would pass to that entity. They could host a massive gymnastics competition, hire judges, pay for judges. I would say the figure skating group could probably do the same, although the city is the actual entity. We'd have to work something out there if that were the case, but Virginia could host these competitions, and then those dollars, so say it's $100,000 a year that goes into a pot, and you could have then any of those entities apply with the assumption, not the assumption, it would have to be in there, that they would be booking at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center for programming, which is what youth hockey could do, whatever it is, if they wanted $5,000 a year for children in need of equipment that can't afford equipment. You could do, but instead of just giving one organization the $100,000 or more from the car donation from Iron Trail Motors, I feel it would be a wonderful opportunity to spread that all around our community and allow those groups, and I think Councilor Beyondich had even suggested at the Humane Society, there's a gal that goes around and does the dog shows. We could host a dog show. So it would take those dollars that the intention was, in my opinion, the intention was to go to programming, the gift of this car, this donation, programming at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. So instead of just giving a lump sum to one group one year and a lump sum to another group, I feel it would be an amazing opportunity for any and all groups in Virginia or our area to be able to apply for those grant dollars and then use them to book the facility for their special event. So I don't know if that makes sense, but this is what I was thinking, and I feel like everybody should be as excited as I am.
So that's a great concept, a great idea. I would have a question for our city attorney before we go to Councilor Johnson. Thank you. So in the naming rights agreement, it says the decision has to be mutually agreed upon by both parties. So it's not just the city allocating this funding. The Iron Trail Motors has to also agree how this works out as well. I think that's what it says. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Mutual agreement between both parties.
Correct.
So what it says in there. So we have to figure that out as well. And so, and it was supposed, and the money that's generated that in the language is to benefit the operations of the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. And your concept, it's kind of a full circle coming back to the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. But say, for example, somebody would apply for a grant under your scenario, that they don't want to book it at the Iron Trail Motors, so they want to do it someplace else. Would they qualify for the grant or not? Likely not.
They know.
Likely not, right? Okay, thank you for that
For
clarification.
the whole auspice of the whole intention, I would say, of the donation of the vehicle is for programming at the Iron Trail Motors
And
Event
that's what it
Center.
says in the agreement, by mutual agreement between both parties, which is Iron Trail Motors and the city of Virginia.
So this way, I mean, you could have the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts, 4-H clubs, you could have school, I mean, there's a myriad of different avenues. As long as they're booking the Iron Trail Motors Event Center for their event, they would qualify to apply for a grant, and we could be fiscally responsible with that. The commitment is for 10 years, so if you take 10,000 out each year and roll it over into a fund, to capture in perpetuity, I mean, I feel like we could do this really in an amazing way that, that clubs in our area would not necessarily have the opportunity to do this. Even the state tournament that we have no name for, I think there are just some really amazing opportunities to do this if we do it right. And I feel like Iron Trail Motors would get on board with it if they understood it could benefit regional, and it's all about the programming at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. That's what the intention is to donate this vehicle. And I just feel like instead of just having one or two groups constantly utilize that, programming those dollars, and maybe it's $100,000 a year, we could really spread it out and be really effective for all the clubs and all the groups that are in our region.
And so the question is that, would you restrict anybody for applying? And we have to set up some parameters there. I mean, could a private club or somebody else come in and do that? And can a 501c3 apply for that grant to do the program too? So all those things have to be worked out, but in concept, it's something for us to consider moving forward. I know you've given a lot of thought to this. So Councilor Johnson, been patiently waiting. Councilor Johnson.
I love your idea. I would add one little thing that we take, because somebody needs to sell these tickets. And so what my thought would be is that we take the gross, we split it in half of it goes into your fund, and then whoever sold the tickets would get, if they sold 10% of the tickets, that nonprofit, they would get 10% of that half. So now we're incentivizing our families to sell the most they can because they're gonna get more money, but we're also long-term planning for what you're saying for events and stuff. So I think that our biggest challenge is going to be people selling tickets, because we won't raise any money if nobody's selling. But if we have all the groups you mentioned have a stake in raising funds somehow, then I think that allows everybody to get that immediate, that instant gratification of we sold $50,000 worth of tickets, we're gonna get 25 of that back, or whatever that is. Then we have the market to sell. We can have tickets whatever nonprofit it is. When we know there's major events going on at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center, moving forward, maybe that's one of the caveats in our contract. And we reserve the option to have a table to sell these Revive or whoever sell tickets at the events. I can't imagine the number of tickets that could have been sold at SME at the SME conference, or at a tournament, or that kind of stuff. So I think, and from what I've looked at, Revive or the foundation would be the two nonprofits to name. I don't know that any other nonprofits have the capability of coordinating that kind of stuff, and I know that's kind of what we need to do, is decide who that is going to be. And I'm guessing the first thing starts with, the first step of that is to put out a request to see who would be willing to manage in partnership with the city and Iron Trail, at least the initial parts, before we get to them taking over and doing the finances. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. So I have a question in that regard, Brian. we can't be involved, correct me if I'm not on the right path here. We can't be involved in selling any tickets for a raffle. We can't be involved in a 501c3. That has to be separate from the city, or can the city designate and help sell raffle tickets? I don't think we can we? Under the gambling law, I think doesn't, whoever the 501c3 is, they would sell the raffle tickets, maybe by agreement with the city and Iron Trail Motors, they pick an organization or a group of organizations that will sell these tickets. And I don't know how that works, where you got one group selling the same raffle tickets as the other, and then how do you meet that up? But that can be done. But the question is we have to keep a separation there. Could you please explain that?
Thank you, Mayor. You're absolutely right. So the city can't direct, I mean, we couldn't put the raffle tickets at our front counter and sell the raffle tickets. We can, individual staff members of the city wouldn't be prohibited from participating. Say if one of our staff members or a council person were named to a board of the nonprofit organization who's overseeing, that's all well and good, so long as we're not a controlling stakeholder in that organization. But the city as an entity cannot officially participate. Does that answer the question, Mayor?
It answers my question, yes, thank you. Okay.
Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Freely.
I believe this group has done this for other organizations in the past, and it would behoove us to talk to them, how they did it, where they did it, with whom they did it, and how those funds were dispersed. Give us kind of a template on which how we would be able to use it in our community. That's what I would suggest. If nobody's done that yet, somebody should talk to them about where they've done it, who they've done it with, and how they've done that.
Yeah, I think that's wise to direct staff to take a look at that, see how it's been done. Let's not reinvent the wheel, see what's legal, what's not legal. One of the challenges that we have is that some of these arenas aren't owned by a city entity. So they have more flexibility in how they sell the raffle tickets. If they own the arena, they don't have to worry about the separation of government. But yeah, it would be a good idea. But the concept that Councilor Paulson brought up is really a well thought out process moving forward. And however we can do to gravitate to accomplish that goal and objective, it would be wise for us to do so. But anything more, Councilor Freely?
I agree. It was intended, I think it was intended for youth programming that would promote and highlight the utilization of the Iron Trail Motors Event Center.
And I think we have to set a standard or some rules or a set of parameters so that not everybody is, what is our goal and objective here on the raffle? And so by having staff take a look at other entities, how they control that would benefit us, and by applying that to the design concept that Councilor Brosnan brought forward. Councilor Paulson.
Thank you, Mayor. So we need to move forward with figuring out who the best partner would be, so we need to motion today on that. My question to you, Mayor, is would this be an appropriate, avenue to form a task force of some of the councilors to kind of meet on this and get some of the information? I mean, would that be appropriate or not?
Well, I think we could do that. I think you have somebody from staff, Brian or others, notify, find out how these other entities are using this car sales sponsored by Iron Trail Motors, because they do a number of them now, and find out how they do that, and bring back that to us, and then maybe I'll bring it back would technically be a building and grounds issue, because it's a concept for the Iron Trail Motors Event Center. Maybe bring that back to building and grounds with the information to be fettered out and then brought back to the committee of the whole for further discussion. I think it would behoove us to do that. Councilor Johnson?
I will move to direct staff to investigate what's been done before and bring forth options to a future Buildings and Grounds Committee for further discussion.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Councilor Johnson, supported by?
Support for discussion.
By Councilor Freely for discussion. Further discussion, Councilor Freely.
Would it not be ideally to have the staff at the Iron Trail Motors Event Center be the people that are heading that up? Or do you want other people involved?
Well, I think we should get the information on how they partner with the other entities to see, you know, how we can apply that partnership with the adjustment to of the city-owned facility.
So should we authorize like Brian to make that contact to start?
My motion is just direct staff, and they can figure out who's most appropriate. It could be Jim, it could be Britt, it could be all three of them.
Yeah, and they could contact Iron Trail Motor and get that information as well, because that's probably going to be the conduit we'll need for the information that we're seeking.
All right, I support.
Thank you. Counselor Paulson?
Thank you. Could we bring it back to the committee of the whole? So it's not just a buildings and grounds? Like, I just really want to be a part of this.
Oh, no, it'll go to Building and Grounds to take a look at it, and then come to the city committee of the whole meeting for all of
I'd like
us.
to be on the ground level of,
You're welcome to attend the meeting.
You can certainly come to the
but I don't
building.
have a voting, I don't get to vote in those meetings as a recommendation, so.
But it'll come back to
come
the
to the
committee of
committee of
whole
the
for
whole.
you to vote on.
Okay,
Would
that's,
that be,
I'd like to be more directly involved
sure.
than that, because normally recommendations come forward and then we pass those recommendations. So I'd like to be more involved at the planning stage. So that's why I was asking if a task force would be appropriate.
Well, we could do that. I just suggested that because it's part of the Building and Grounds coming through that we could do it. But we could certainly appoint 3 councils to sit on there after the information comes back. We could do that.
Okay, I'm
But no, you know, committees are designed for a certain thing. And so to go outside the committee structure, I would prefer we stay within that. I get where you're coming from about wanting to be directly involved, but I'd like to follow the committee structure if we can, if we're going to have committees, and we don't do them very often. When we do, this is when it'd be a goal and objective in which to accomplish that. But we would still have come back. They'd have the information that's received by the committee. They still have to come back to the committee whole and discuss it all over again for us to have a further discussion about what they discussed there and express our views and then make a motion for the committee whole meeting moving forward if we choose to do so. Does that acceptable to you, Councilor Paulson?
That's acceptable, but I was almost thinking, in my mind, I was envisioning not bypassing committees, but almost like we did with the design team. A similar, like a separate committee for this specific.
Well, you can certainly make a motion to do that. I just made the suggestion, it goes back to Building and Grounds, but, I mean, it doesn't matter as long as with the information come back to us, whether it's through Building and Grounds or through the committee of the whole meeting, or whoever's involved in that and how we move forward with that process. So anybody's welcome to make a motion on the floor if they choose to do so. What's the motion on the floor, please? What is the motion? Please read it back.
Moved by Counselor Johnson, supported by Counselor Freelieb, to direct staff to research and bring back recommendations to a future Building and Grounds Committee meeting for a 501c3 organization to handle the raffling of the donation made by Iron Trail Motors per the naming rights agreement.
So is that the motion? Now support for that motion for discussion. Is there any further discussion?
Mayor,
Yes, Councilor Paulson.
I would think, if we're dealing with money, I would think this would go under finance, not buildings and grounds. Maybe could I have our attorney weigh in on that?
Well, I think
We're talking about money
we're just.
and a raffle.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I
But
feel like
we're
this is
not making any
finance.
decisions on that, but please, if you would answer Councilor Paulson's question. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. Truly, the answer from the legal perspective is this is within the discretion of the council who we refer it back to. Of course, there's aspects of money, there's aspects that it touches on the building or the facilities, but it's truly the appointment of the committee or where it's referred is within the discretion of the council.
So there's a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any further discussion? Councilor Beyondich?
We'll make this a little bit longer.
That's fine. As long as we get a decision made in the end, we're in good shape.
As I'm looking across at you, I don't know if I can do this, but could I step down from Buildings and Grounds and allow Councilor Paulson for this?
Well, you could always be a substitute appointment to Building and Grounds as long, the mayor appoints the committees, and certainly if you can't make it, we could certainly appoint an alternate in your place. And that's not an issue. It's because it's a committee appointment. So if you choose to do that, Counselor Beyond, certainly Counselor Paulson, who has requested to be directly involved, and could take your place and serve in this particular capacity under Building and Grounds.
So I am completely okay sitting on that committee and having you at the committee meeting.
Well, in order to be a voting member, you have to be appointed to that committee. So if you're going to step down temporarily, we can certainly reappoint somebody to take your place to serve in a capacity, whether it's 1 meeting, 2 meetings, or 3 meetings.
Can I continue?
So you're requesting to step down and asking Counselor Paulson to serve in the capacity under Building and Grounds with respect to this particular topic?
Well, if I may continue.
Yeah, please.
At the Buildings and Ground Committee meeting, you would be able to attend that. But any decision that is made would come right back here. So you would ultimately come back to it. I don't think it's the intent of the committee to make decisions, and, I mean, they always come back and can be revisited. More discussion happens at that level. But I know how you feel strongly about this, coming back to Buildings and Grounds. But I think this, just the way that it's structured, I think it just requires a lot of clarification on how this can be done. It's not as simple as just doing it. So I think we really need to look at how the process is going to happen. And it sounded like a great idea in the beginning because we're getting this, we can reap the benefits from it. But I think there's a lot more that is going to play into this than maybe we are thinking of. So I would absolutely welcome you to come to the meeting and be part of the discussion.
And I think I came to the Building and Ground meeting last time and recognized by the chair and gave some information, some thoughts that I had with respect to it. I just didn't have a vote, obviously, and I know you're looking for a vote, but by participating, by attending this Building and Grounds meeting on this particular subject, you'll have the opportunity to be well-informed, so when it comes back to the committee of the whole meeting, you'll have a larger voice, so to speak. Does that make sense? Thank you. So it has been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is discuss MAPE contract negotiations, which should be in a closed session. Before we go to that, if we could jump down to number 13, discuss property offer for parcel at 103 10th Street South in our public safety development area. This also could go in a closed session, but I do not recommend that we close.
So we have an agreement on 103 10th Street South in the public safety area.
We do. So that was one of the 5 last houses that were in our public safety area. We have a purchase agreement, so we'll remove it from the eminent domain list. We additionally will be having a purchase agreement, I'm hoping in the next week or so, for the vacant lot. So that'll go down to just 3 parcels in the eminent domain area.
Are you looking for a motion on the floor at this committee level to approve the agreement?
I am. This is a prudent offer, and I think it's a good one.
So moved.
Moved to approve by Counselor Johnson. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Counselor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye, opposed, motion carries. And before we go to the next item on the agenda, we're going to be being requested to go into closed session.
The next two items we need to discuss, 12 and 14, are both closed session items.
Okay, thank you. And before we do, I'd like to ask, ma'am, you've been sitting here discussing the council, sitting on the committee loan meeting the whole time. Is there something you'd like to say or address in the council? Okay, well, thank you very much for coming. Appreciate that very much. Jan, thank you for coming. And so I'm looking for a motion to move into closed session. Moved by Counselor
Support
Beyondich,
with a short break.
supported by Counselor Johnson. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed, motion carries. We're now in closed session. Let's take a 10-minute break.